evening, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you are listening. We're recording late at night. The final whistle has just gone in Dusseldorf. France have got the 1-0 win against Austria, and we are here to look back on all the results, or most of the results, since you last saw us when Scotland embarrassed themselves on the national stage. As always, welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. My name is Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friend,
Adam. You may have also been joining me for the live stream watch along of France taking on Austria as well. So this fine evening, and Rory, it's great to have so many games again, back to back. Having to just convince the missus that I'm doing something good by being out of her way and watching football in the office is all good, right?
Well, I got absolutely cussed out because she's not here, so I can say it now. On the live stream with Scotland, Germany, I have to inform you that she wasn't watching Grey's Anatomy, and it is in fact a very good show. So I was wrong on both counts. So I just wanted to clear that up, just in case she happens to be listening. I don't know why she would, but just in case. Very scary woman. But yeah, it's all good. So much football. I managed to squeeze it in today. Like, my afternoons are quite quiet, my evenings are busy. So I did get to watch Ukraine, Romania. I got to a passing glance at Belgium taking on Slovakia, and then obviously very, very little of France, Austria. But the last couple of days have been football filled. As you can probably tell, guys, my house is looking a bit spare as well. I am currently in between houses, moving house. So it's all very hectic at the minute. But let's just talk about the football. Let's take my mind off it. We can concentrate on the football. And let's start with the Anglo part of this show. And let's start with England get the job done. It was a 1-0 win against Serbia. Not the most exciting, but the first half hour in particular, I think, was very encouraging from England. Standout stars, Jude Bellingham, Bukayo Saka, of course, Declan Rice, of course, Mark Gahey looking very steady at the back in what was a pretty big game for him. So let's focus on the positives before we moan for the next half an hour about England. The biggest positive for you in this game, and why was it Jude Bellingham?
Assumption-wise, Jude was superb. Absolutely incredible, wasn't he? Just that confidence exuded out of him at times, and just the pure audacity of what he was trying to attempt. But it reminded me of a Steven Gerrard performance all those many moons ago, where he was kind of in every part of the field. And if his heat map isn't read across all of the pitch, I'll be very surprised. Maybe with the exception of maybe Pickford's goal, where he shouldn't be there anyway, right? But yeah, that performance was absolutely incredible. And yeah, superlatives really just fail, don't they, when they're trying to describe this guy. And it makes it more difficult for Southgate to try and even maybe experiment with that kind of formation, because how do you not kind of try and give this guy a rest at times? Because he just wants to be on that pitch. He wants to play. And you can tell that without him, there is a feeling that they may struggle. We got an indication when he came off against Serbia, right? That actually suddenly the kind of tempo started to drop, and, maybe the expectations started to drop. So it was fascinating from that point of view. I think Saka had a very good first half, maybe less so in the second half, maybe because Serbia started to come out a bit more and realised that they had to double up on him. Like you say, Mark Guehi, I thought, had a very good game. And I thought Declan Rice, actually, I think he controlled it and made sure that there was a kind of confidence in that midfield at times, and gave that reassured kind of aspect to the game. I think there were some shaky performances from the likes of Kieran Trippier, for example. Johnny Stones, I didn't think had his most superb of games. I know we're probably going to highlight about Phil Foden's performance and potentially Harry Kane as well. But I think question marks really still stick with Southgate in terms of his in-game management for that second half. That was my overriding thoughts there, Rory.
Yeah, I feel like he pre-decided those substitutions before the game, and nothing was going to change his mind from those substitutions. I think he could have made the Gallagher substitution a bit quicker. I think Trent wasn't as bad as the internet seems to think that he was. I thought he was fine. He was a little bit too advanced for me. I'd like to see him drop back. Like, if you're going to play a deep lying playmaker, which I think he'd be fantastic at, you need to be deep. Like, what we want to see him do is spraying those balls out to the wing. But if
Sure.
you're in a compact midfield, you don't have the space to do that. If you drop a yard, 5, 10 yards deeper, be the first option for the defense, and then you've got that space to spray out those balls. I think there's just a little tweak there. You'll get a lot more out of him, but I don't think he was as bad as everybody said. Yeah, but sorry, I got sidetracked. I think those substitutions were decided before the game, basically, and his inability to react to match, like to game situations, could be something that later on in the knockout rounds could cost you, right? But I think overall, I think Southgate kind of got it right for the first half, right? He got the game plan right, and he got like the players in the right positions pretty much. I think like the issue with Jude Bellingham is that he's so incredibly fantastic that you can't not have him in that position, and you're shoehorning Phil Foden into that team because it's Phil Foden, but that's not where he's most effective. Now, I also think it was an awful performance from him. I think like I was really happy to see that Cesc Fabregas kind of putting Mika Richards in his place a little bit in the post-match, where he was like, what can we do to get the most out of Phil Foden? What can we do? And he was like, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. Like, what can Phil Foden do to impose himself on the game? And I think the only player in the England team at the moment that I would be like, we change everything to get the most out of him is Jude Bellingham, right? I know that if the game plan has to change for Saka to improve, or Saka has to change how he plays for that team, then he has to do it, right? And Phil Foden has to do the same. I think it wasn't only the fact that he wasn't able to hold any width at all, and that's partly because Kieran Trippier's right-footed. There weren't the overlaps. But when you look at the passing map and the heat map, he's basically sat on top of Jude Bellingham, like getting in the way the entire game. It's like you need to just pull out wide and like give that option. And like it sounds a bit like cliched and like, but we've seen it with Grealish at City, and we've seen it with a few players at City that they don't have they don't think for themselves, because the whole thing is so measured to
intricate,
the T. If you get the ball, you do this, then this happens, and that's fantastic. It works. They win everything, right? But I think there's a lot of other players like Jude Bellingham. You drop him in any other team, he adapts to the system. He does what he needs to do, right? You drop Saka into any team, he adapts the system, and I think that's something that within Foden he needs to improve, because he's not as young as people think he is, right? And for him to ever be good in an England shirt, he needs to be able to thrive in another system. So I think there was just part of his mentality as well that wasn't quite right. Obviously, he's a fantastic player, right? Nobody's saying that. I just think mentally he wasn't really in the game at all. There was a moment where he just tried a midfield pass like 5 yards. It just went straight to a Serbian player so they could counter. And it happened a few times. Like it happened a few times. I think he was just... It was not a good night for him, but also, as I said, he's being shoehorned into that team on the left wing. I think Cole Palmer would have worked better out there. And I think if Southgate had been able to react to the game state, Anthony Gordon should have been brought on for Foden.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know why Foden wasn't brought on. But that being said, him bringing on Bowen for Saka, I think it was a pre-planned substitution, and I think we will see that a lot through the tournament. But that substitution really worked. And if the keeper hadn't pulled off an amazing save, Kane would have scored. It would have been 2-0, and nobody would be talking about how few times Kane touched the ball, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely think Bowen wasn't a bad addition to the squad. I agree with you. Anthony Gordon should have definitely been put into that team for the second half, especially in place of Foden, because Foden wasn't maybe offering as much as maybe people anticipated, and certainly would have given a bit more of a stretch to the game if you had someone that was willing to run down that left-hand side a little bit more as well and drag those Serbian players across. One other thing that I would say observational-wise is I felt that whilst the Trent Alexander experiment, should we call it, maybe didn't work as well, perhaps. I think there was an opportunity there in the second half where the game was basically getting a slightly bit dominated by the Serbian style of play, that there was an opportunity to bring in an Adam Wharton or Kobe Mainu a lot sooner than Kobe Mainu got introduced. Personally, I would have gone with Adam Wharton just to break up the play, just to say, tell him, just get the tackles in and pass it on. Get just nice and simple, just try and keep hold of the ball, keep the dominance. This is the thing that England seem to really struggle in tournaments like this, is that sometimes you don't have to be too like aggressive with the ball, like with the substitution of Conor Gallagher. That was another person that just runs. He runs around, but you need to keep your discipline. You need to just keep the ball possession. You just need to keep it simple sometimes in these moments. And that's the thing that England have got to learn to do better. I think if you had Mino introduced a lot earlier, for example, he would have probably got into the rhythm of the game. Same with Adam Wharton. You bring him in around the 50th minute mark when you can see that that's the way the game is going. You know, Serbia was starting to get some confidence. You know, they weren't necessarily having clear-cut chances, Rory, at that very moment. But if you have someone like that, it just means it helps those attacking players to get their natural games. They don't have to keep tracking back. And that's what I felt was happening. It was encouraging a lot more pressure from the Serbian point of view. Tadic got more involved in the game. We saw Dusan Vlahovic have a better second half. Lots to learn from. I think there's a natural disappointment towards Southgate, though. And that is the concern, I think, at this point, that you think
I think it's
long
just
he's had to develop this group of players. Sorry, Rory, go.
No. You cut out. I'll edit around it. Don't worry. But yeah, I think it's something that it looks like it's going to be his last tournament, right? But it's something we hope he can learn across this tournament to react to game states a little bit better. I think Conor Gallagher looked busy, but gave away the ball a lot. I think he's all energy and he's all heart, but technically he's just not that great. No. But we're going to leave England there, I think, because we could moan for another 10, 15 minutes, I think. But we're going to leave that there. 3 points on the board. Job done. On to the next one. The next game maybe a little bit trickier. I'm not sure, but I think we might have got the toughest game out of the way. So let's move over to Italy. Wow. Well. When it kicked off and within 10 seconds they'd conceded, whatever it was, I thought, oh, it's going to be that kind of tournament, is it? It's going to be World Cup 2010, is it? It's going to be Euro 2012. Yeah. Is this what we're staring down the barrel of? But thankfully, despite the worst start in history, Italy were able to turn it around. But let's first focus on the Albania goal, because it's an incredible moment. I think the celebrations from the Albanian fans were insane. Like, one of those moments when you can see how much it means to countries. Like,
yeah, 100%.
For Italy to score, Italy are expected to score. But when Albania score, it's like, we've taken the lead against Italy, right? It was just a beautiful moment.
It was beautiful. I think that was one of those moments where prior to the game kicking off as well, you saw good spirit between the two sets of fans. You could see how many of the Albanian fans took over, obviously, the Signal Iduna Park as well. So you could see there was a huge contingent ready for this game. They were anticipating something, and that gave them a lot of self-belief. They'd almost done the hard work so much earlier on than probably they planned to do so. And that was just born out of the fact that Fede De Marco, I don't know what he was doing in that instant. Obviously, he was initially going to get the ball higher up. You could see that's what his thought process was, but no one was offering themselves up. For some reason, he thought, I'll just do a casual laid-back ball to Bastoni. And Bastoni obviously didn't react as quickly as Berami. Berami was that much quicker and blasted a fantastic effort. Donnarumma doesn't stand a hell of a chance in trying to stop that, but what a moment for Albania. And that at least gives them a bit something in the history books as well. Fastest goal at a Euros. So fantastic. But credit to Italy for the way they came back at it. That would have been so easy for this Italy squad to have collapsed, crumbled, maybe even got worse in terms of their gameplay, because, you know, we have to remember there is some new players adjusting to new systems, Spalletti as well. And there were some mature performances on the night, typified by the likes of Barella, for example, but also Calafiori in the back line as well. Absolutely superb. The comments you heard after the game of like ex-pro saying he looks like a player that had already had like 70 caps. That kind of tells you the Calafiori that we've been purring about all season. Some superb performances from an Italy perspective, and none more so than obviously DeMarco getting himself, despite the setback, setting up the equaliser for Bastoni as well.
Well, I saw, I went for a coffee yesterday in the cafe just under the building, and the owner is an Inter fan. And he was arguing with a Milan fan, just going, you need to say thank you to Inter. Inter got Italy the win. All the best players for Italy last night were Inter players. So it's like, yeah, Barella, Bastoni, right? Just incredible. I think Calafiori was fantastic, right? But I really want to give Bastoni his props as well, because he's a defender that people have just, if you don't watch Serie A every week, he's just so underrated. It's criminal. Honestly, the guy's incredible. For him to get the goal as well, I was delighted for him. And I think him alongside Bastoni just really worked. Alongside Calafiori, really worked well. But I wanted to give Bastoni his flowers. But yeah, that whole inter-spine kind of really Fratesi looking good as well. Barella with just a classic Barella performance. The goal was beautiful, but the way he directed that game and his passing range and keeping just the metronome. Regular listeners know he's a player I absolutely adore, and I just think for him to start off that well at the tournament and be like the player that gets you back in the lead, and just that statement of okay, we're here, because not only did they come back, they came back super quickly. It was kind of within 10 minutes they turned the game around. And then despite it being 2-1 towards the end, it never really felt like Albania were going to score. There was no real jeopardy. It was just Italy managed the game really well. And you're like, okay, they've got these new players. There's a lot of fresh faces in that squad, but they've still got that Italian knowledge on how to manage a game and how to see things out, right? And I think it was just a really encouraging start from Italy. Because Albania are no mugs either. There's some very good players in that side. I think they're going to cause Spain and Croatia problems. Probably Croatia more than Spain.
Yes, I think
they're going to cause those problems. So I think there was a lot of pressure on Italy for that game, and there was zero for Albania. So for Italy to get through and get the 3 points is huge. I want to talk about Scamacca as well. Because despite the fact that he didn't score, right? But in terms of, he is the perfect striker for that system, right? And I think he's come in and hit form. Like Spalletti must be thanking whichever god he prays to that he's hit form at the right time, because there was a bit of a headache there. Like Retegui had an okay season for Genoa, but started really brightly, kind of faded. And there was a bit of a question mark of okay, who is going to fill this spot? But Scamacca, just the end into the season he had, and his ability to hold up the ball and bring in other players into play is honestly up there with the best strikers in the world in that, in how he does that part of his game, right? Now we've seen he scores beautiful goals. He could maybe do with scoring a bit more often, but I think he's going to be such a key player for Italy. And it was just a great performance from him, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think we've seen the last 6 months him developing and being more asked about his game, right? He's improved little elements under the Gasparini, and he showed it in this game that whilst he might not be contributing much in the goal contribution area, he can still bring in, like you say, players in terms of that kind of 1-2 touch move. And I think that is what you need from a striker, not necessarily to always be on the end of things, but also to be the man that holds up the play, keeps off the pressure from the back line as well, because there was moments where there was pressure from Albanians, but they weren't, like you say, doing much with it. And that was when you kind of mirror it against Armando Broja, who very similar style of striker, maybe slightly different dynamics to an extent. But every time the ball went to him, he wasn't aggressive with it. He wasn't holding up the ball, and subsequently he got substituted. But one thing I did want to call out also was Federico Chiesa. I thought he had some fantastic moments in this match. He was trying to create opportunities, which we never saw this at Juventus. We know that he's like a canned animal in that environment, but he really did demonstrate with Italy anyway in this particular match that there are moments in him still. There are still things that he can create, these special spark of creativity, and none more so than against Albania. So a lot of optimism, I would say, off the back of that result. Like you say, this was a really important game that if they'd even drawn, for example, Rory, I think that puts them in a difficult position going into the Spain game. But now that they've got 3 points, they can now kind of not relax, but at least know that a point against Spain might not be a bad result. They go into the last game knowing that They just need to draw it. They don't need to sweat about getting a result potentially as much as potentially if they hadn't got results. And just word on Albania, I knew about the credentials when they were in the Poland group. I totally expected them to do what they did, and they did it very well. Unfortunately, like I say, they maybe climatized and got the results in terms of the goal far too early in terms of the way the match panned out. However, there is a lot to build on. This is their first major tournament whereby they've been able to maybe compete against a nation like an Italy, like a Spain, and take the game to them. So lots to take forward. I suspect in the next game, they will take it a lot more to Croatia. And Croatia, as we'll probably allude to, are a shadow of the Croatia that we've known for the last few tournaments.
Yeah, well, just quickly before we move on from Albania, I wanted to give Strakosha some plaudits as well because he had a very good game. There was a bit of a headache beforehand of who Albania were going to play in goal because Strakosha, obviously at Brentford, in case you forgot, hasn't really played a minute. But for him to come in and put in such a good performance, make some big saves, I thought I really wanted to tip my hat to him. And Aslani, another Inter, a player that people will argue about forever on Twitter, but there was moments and there was some passes from him where I was like, yeah, there is a player in there. There is a player in there still. So fantastic from him. But yeah, Italy, big win, takes off a lot of the pressure heading into that massive game on Thursday. I cannot wait. My class finishes at 9. I am running to the nearest bar so I can sit and watch that game afterwards. I cannot wait. Let's move on from Italia and let's talk about some games that caught our eye. Well, firstly, Adam, I'm going to go to the one that everybody was making jokes about today. How big a football fan are you? Are you going to put yourself through Romania and Ukraine, right? Only real football fans will sit and enjoy this. Well, I'll tell you what a game. Romania stunned Ukraine 3-0. Now, we'll talk about Ukraine and just how I didn't want to use the word shell-shocked. It might be in bad taste, but how shell-shocked they were after the goal went in. But Romania, I've seen very few teams come with as much energy as they have into that first game. They absolutely ran Ukraine ragged. The speed and incisive passing through the midfield, like the breaks were always 2-3 passes max, straight through the Ukrainian midfield. And a left wing of Mudryk and Zinchenko was pretty ugly watching if you're Ukrainian and was cut through far too many times. But players like Dennis Mann, who we know from his time at Panama, had a fantastic game. Stanciu with a beautiful finish. Lunin not having his greatest day. He kind of fails to deal with the first shot, but Stanciu just curls it into the top corner. And even with the second goal, I might be being a little bit harsh, but it goes in between his arm and his body. And I think he just doesn't quite get down quick enough. It's still a great strike, but I think I'd be disappointed if my keeper let that in, right? So I think Lunin didn't have a great day, but Romania just absolutely fantastic and proper vibes about this team. Marin was incredible. Hadji, always great to see a Hadji on the pitch. He was looking pretty lively. I feel like we could. Now I know it's like they've still got some tough games coming up, but we could be seeing the emergence of the surprise package this tournament because this team look like they've got real quality. And defensively, they're just so solid.
Yes, that was the thing that I was going to allude to with Radu Dragusin having a superb game marshalling his defense and giving them like fist pumps and, just chest pumps as well, alongside Burka, who was the centre back. They did really superbly well in keeping the Dovbyk really quiet during the duration of the game. Even when Sudakov came in or got himself involved, his shots from distance really didn't do too much for Romania. But like you say, a lot of the plaudits will go towards the attacking kind of outlets from a Romania perspective. Dennis Mann was so clever with that third intricate goal where he gets it into Dragus for that third goal. But yeah, Stanciu obviously reacts quickly towards that first goal, for example, and the Marin goal that you mentioned. I get what you mean about Lunin and maybe not getting down quickly enough to react, but they did measure how quickly Marin's shot was. It was very quick.
Yeah,
That's
no,
the only
I
thing.
realised that
So
might have been a
this is
bit
the,
harsh.
this is the problem. I think when you slow it down, it looks like Lunin should do better. And look, I've been guilty of doing that in the past where I've said he should have saved that, should have definitely saved that. However, yeah, I mean, Romania are the team that we probably have slept on because Philippe in the preview didn't have too much high hopes. You know, he didn't think that they had necessarily the attacking target man. You know, he was praying that Puskas wouldn't be put or started. And he came on as a substitute, so he was absolutely happy and overjoyed with that. But as you say, Yanis Hadji, he has got something in him as well when he comes on. But yeah, Dennis Mann was the man for me. It was just incredible. Just the fact that he set up 2 of those goals, chased down. He did all of the intricacies. I'm looking forward to seeing this guy in Serie A next season. I genuinely, we've seen him a few times in the Coppa Italia games for Parma. Boy, this is a guy that we should be keeping an eye out on. But yeah, fantastic performance throughout that Romania side. On the word for Ukraine, very disappointing. You could see the demeanor of Rebrov. He was really deflated by the fact that they went 3-0 down. I think they lacked ideas. They didn't know what to do in that scenario. And I wasn't convinced about this Ukrainian side when they played Poland before the tournament. Poland won that game against Ukraine 2-0, still with the likes of Mudryk in the side, Dovbyk, Sudakov. They didn't look inspiring to me. I fear people have maybe overestimated this side and expect them to do better than they actually will at this tournament. And yeah, if they don't fix up in the next game, I think they'll be the first team that will be waving goodbye to going back home anyway early in this tournament.
Well, I think for them, the good luck is, I'm just checking who they play next, or they've got Slovakia next. If they had Belgium next, they might have more of a chance. Yeah. But coming up against Slovakia is maybe going to be a little bit tricky. I think, yeah, there was just, it felt like once the second goal went in, because it was quite early-ish in the second half, it kind of felt like Ukraine were maybe getting a foothold, and then it was like, bang, that goes in, and then the third, and the whole thing just collapsed. I feel like there was, it's hard not to look at everything through the context of what they're representing and what they're going through, but it did feel like they were all just a bit stunned and the weight of the occasion just got a bit too much for them. I think a player like Mudryk is so fascinating because he has all the raw ingredients to be an incredible player, but he just doesn't quite get it. I saw a great tweet today, which was a little bit insensitive, but it did make me laugh. And it was like, you need to send Mudryk to the front line so he can learn how to pull the fucking trigger. And it's just like, it's a bit in bad taste, but it's just, he holds onto the ball a slight bit too long, or he just skews his shot just like right at the wrong angle, or picks. But he's got the pace, he's got strength, he's got dribbling, he's got all the ingredients, but it's just not quite coming together. I think he's quite a chaotic player, and him going into a chaotic club like Chelsea probably isn't the right place for him.
No, probably not.
And I just feel like it's kind of, you can see it spiraling away from him. And when he's one of your more dangerous, kind of experienced attacking players, there's a lot of weight riding on that guy, right? I think Sudakov had a few moments where I thought, okay, this is the player that people have been telling me about, but there was nothing else around him. As you said, Dovbyk was completely marked out of the game. Dragoshin is annoying to admit, but he was fantastic. My God, he's a good-looking man as well. I forgot how good-looking he was. But he was defending with his life. The whole Romanian team were. But I think, for Ukraine, it's just like kind of similar to that Scotland start. It's just the worst thing you want is to get pumped in the first game. And they kind of got pumped. So they've got to just, I don't know, they've got to, like, Rebrov has to sit back and look and just go, like we said, our advice for Scotland now is, right, forget that ever happened. Next game, they've just got to wipe that from the memory and be like, right, Slovakia, we start again. This is the first game, like, go. So I think really, really disappointing from them. But Romania were just absolutely fantastic. Their energy in their attacks was just, they were relentless, absolutely relentless. It'd be interesting to see if they take the same approach when they come up against, for example, a Belgium. If they take that same approach, I think Belgium could be in for a real tough time, because moving on to Belgium, look at that for a segue. The golden generation. People people talk about the England golden generation, the Portuguese golden generation, right? Who never really won anything. But is this the most disappointing golden generation? I feel like they might get through the groups now, but we can already see that they're not really going to go far in the tournament.
I mean, it's difficult, isn't it, when you think about what were Belgium's expectations with this group of players, right? Because they have managed to make like semi-finals of tournaments, they have managed to make quarterfinals, and yes, maybe with the quality of players that they have at their disposal, then maybe they should be aspiring to be making finals, right? I don't think necessarily Roberto Martinez did a bad job overall when you look at the grand scheme of things. However, yeah, this generation of players are going to be frowned upon from a national perspective because there's that expectation that maybe they should have done better. Now, it's interesting because they are in an almost transitional phase as well, because you can see the likes of your Kevin De Bruyne's, for example, Romelu Lukaku, are coming to the end of their kind of little vein of form now. And I don't know necessarily what's going to happen next for Belgian football, but you can see there's pockets of these newer players coming through, like Onana. I think there's a lot of expectation that Onana, Bakayoko, for example, Oponda, there's these players, but I think obviously there's that little bit of disharmony behind the scenes as well, with the likes of Thibaut Courtois not being involved, for example. Could that be the element that breaks up this Belgium squad? Is it that they haven't got harmony behind the scenes, and that is the reason why they don't seemingly deliver on the pitch? I don't know, but Rory, for years, that this has been a squad of players that you think on paper they should be trying to at least be at those latter stages of competitions, right?
Well, I think they seem like a squad that have never really liked each other. There's always been stories and issues about, issues between Thibaut Courtois' girlfriend and De Bruyne or whatever. Like, there's always been stories that it's not harmony in the camp, right? But I always look at them and compare them to Croatia in the last 10 years, for example, or the last 15 years, right? This is a golden generation for Croatia, a lot of people would say, right? They've reached a World Cup final, a Euros final. They've reached semi-finals. They've been consistently, they've come second in the Nations League, right? They've I know you can argue about whether the Nations League is important. I think it is a pretty good test of how good you are as a team. And they've been there or thereabouts. They've been challenging. We are talking about Croatia in terms of can they take that final step? Whereas with Belgium, we're talking about can they get to a final, right?
Yeah.
The one semi-final they got to was when they lost to Portugal. Why is it Portugal? Why in Portugal? In my head, they lost to Portugal, but I can't remember if that was the year Portugal won it. I can't remember, but I think they got to one semi-final off the top of my head. They've never really been close. I think if you take those players and put them in any other nation, they get somewhere. Like, you've got De Bruyne, who has been the best midfielder in the Premier League for the past however long since he arrived in the Premier League, right? He's been the best Premier League in the league. He's been the best midfielder in the league. You've got Lukaku, who for Belgium, his hit rate is insane. Like, you can argue about his Chelsea form, his Inter form, whatever. For his country, he has delivered. You've had that fairly solid defense. I think Martinez didn't do a terrible. Like, we joked about him, they've got a more exciting manager probably, but he didn't do a terrible job. I just feel like these players have underachieved on the big stage at every opportunity. When the heat has been on, they've just not stepped up. And I think they're all going to look back at this, and the Belgian fans will look back at this and just be like, what a wasted opportunity. What wasted opportunities. There's just always so uninspiring as well. It's never like that you ever really believe they can do it. Even when they were getting to semi-finals, there wasn't that feeling of like, okay, this is an unstoppable force. This is the year. This is it was always slightly unconvincing. So I think, just so many open questions for Belgium now. And it's absolutely vital that they win that next game, right?
Yeah.
They have to go up against Romania, who are going to run at them, and they have to get a result now. So I think this is just such a tepid performance. I think Onana was terrible in midfield. I know he's a very exciting midfielder, but he does blow hot and cold. He was absolutely terrible. But he wasn't the only one. There wasn't a single player here that could hold their head up high, really. I know Belgium had 2 goals disallowed. One of them was potentially a pretty terrible decision and should have been given as a goal. But I don't think their performance in any way merited them getting anything.
Sure. Yeah. No, agree with that. And I think, I don't know where Tedesco goes from here. That's the real dilemma. I think, look, you've got so many question marks. Do you change up the formation or do you change up the personnel? I think it feels like it's a combination of both, because I don't know necessarily if the formation works in their favor. It played in the hands of Slovakia. I think Slovakia were a bit fortunate at times. Look, there was 2 disallowed goals, the last one being a bit controversial. But look, at least it's one of those that they can, a bit like the scenario that we've said with Ukraine and Scotland, they have to dust themselves down. I think if you're talking about a side that can dust themselves down and get themselves through, Belgium probably look the more equipped to do it. But like I've alluded to, I wonder if the disharmony behind the scenes will influence how far they go in this tournament.
We will see. We do have to give Slovakia some kudos. I've just seen that Belgium have bloody Jan Carrasco at left back. What the frig is going on? What year is it and why is he a left back? But anyway, Slovakia, Lobotka, of course. Just good to see him happy again. He's not had a good time at Napoli this season, has he really? It's been a slog. It's good to see him there. Kuchka is another player we know from Parma who had a very good game. And of course, Scrans with the goal. Now, it was Castile should definitely do better. He just palms it straight at him. But to finish it from that angle, really, really calm, composed finish.
Yeah.
Beautiful goal. And for Slovakia did defend like absolute lions.
Yeah,
and they were able to just when this is the team spirit, the players that want to gain graft for each other. This is when it makes the difference, right? So I think a huge moment for Slovakia. And maybe we could see them making it into the latter stages. That with the 3 going through, or the best 3 going through, a win and a decent goal difference basically gets you through. So Slovakia are kind of on their way, which would be pretty huge.
Yeah, exactly.
So great moment for them. But let's quickly, before we go, rounding up the rest. Were there any other games? I can see you got your Poland shirt on, Adam. It was so close, but just not to be, was it?
No, I think there was some inspiring optimism to be gained out of that performance. Yes, we were open at times. Second half was a lot more self-belief. It was just those little moments of quality that really did tell. Obviously, promising news about Lewandowski. He's kicking a football, so he'll be ready for the Austria game. Based on the performance that we've just seen tonight, I feel like Poland have a lot to be optimistic about. Certainly, look, we do have to improve in our transitions, the way we play. But Michal Probesh has encouraged this group of players to be a lot more open in terms of the style of football. You could see this is an improvement on the last tournaments under Mikniewicz, where the ball was dreadful.
Who were allergic to the ball, I think.
The fact, I think we have to remind ourselves, this was the first ever defeat for Michal Probesh in his Polish reign as well. So to lose to someone like Holland or the Netherlands, look, there's no, we can't be too dismissive of this result. There's lots to be optimistic about. Obviously, it's a big ask in this group. It was always going to be a big ask. It's disappointing in the manner of the goal. That's the thing that I think is a bit disappointing. But Rory, I'm optimistic. I still feel against Austria, we might even get 3 points now.
I thought it was a really good performance, honestly. I thought it just night and day between what we saw at the World Cup and you actually trying to play 100%. Football against the team. It was just fantastic, honestly. I really, really, since my time living in Poland, I always really want Poland to do well. And when I celebrated that goal going in like it was an England goal, Antonio, I was so happy for that to go in. But elsewhere, just very quickly want to go through the headlines. Breland Bolo, after a pretty frigging difficult year for him, getting a goal to seal the win in a 3-1 win over Hungary. Michel Aibischer, Bologna legend, getting a great goal and an assist for the first game. So 2 standout performances there. Hungary, a little bit disappointing, but I did enjoy seeing their striker, Martin Adam. It was quite interesting seeing his reactions post-match as well. Obviously, he is massive. And a lot of the memes weren't particularly nice. And his comments were just really interesting. He was like, I can't do anything about my genetics. I've played football and I've always been big. And If you check out his goal scoring record in his career, by the way, it's fucking mental. The guy scores so many goals. But it was, I did think we had another Patania when he came onto the pitch. I was like, oh, there is a Patania in the Euros. He looks a bit like a pub player, but yeah, did enjoy seeing that. Hungary weren't as bad as the 3-1 suggested, I think, but Switzerland did manage to get the win there. Spain 3, Croatia 0. Adam, how surprised were you by this?
Very surprised by the scoreline, especially the way that Spain emphatically beat this Croatia squad in the first half. Lamine Yamal obviously is the standout player in terms of just allowing Croatia to chase shadows at times. It was an absolutely incredible performance. Obviously, Fabian Ruiz, fantastic performance in midfield. Alvaro Morata with that finish as well. I mean, there's a lot to be optimistic. I think Spain got away with one in the second half, especially when Rodri for that penalty incident potentially. And the fact that Croatia somehow spawned that chance, if they'd scored that, then potentially we might be talking about a different game. However, Croatia, all the damage was done in the first half. And unfortunately, it was just not a Croatia we recognised. It was such a bizarre performance. You'd hope that Croatia will be up for it for the second game. But look, it's a big ask. We mentioned about Albania's credentials. It's not an easy group. Yeah. They have to go out there and win the game. So this is going to be fascinating because both sides really need to win. So let's see who can dominate this one. But yeah, Croatia, very disappointing on this occasion.
Yeah, I feel like they had zero attacking threat. Budimir had a chance where he should have scored when I think Perisic whipped it across the box in the second half. Yeah. Really unlucky for that to not go in, but just the midfield was non-existent. Just not the Croatia we recognise. But Spain, super direct as well. Just really not what... Quite exciting football. The only thing for Cucurella to get picked ahead of Grimaldo fucking blows my mind. But I still think Cucurella is a liability, and I don't know if against bigger sides, Grimaldo's just done an unbeaten season. I'm not sure how Cucurella's got in there ahead of him, but I'm going to put my own agenda to the side there. And then the last game I wanted to talk about, I think, is the last one. Slovenia-Denmark finished 1-1. Moment of the tournament so far, without a doubt. Christian Eriksen getting his goal, basically 3 years to the day since that horrific incident. Just a beautiful chest down control and finish as well. An incredible moment for him. I think every fan, even Slovenian fans, a little bit would have been like, that is nice. That is nice. And then if you've seen or heard the Slovenian commentary to the equalizer, it is just incredible that their first goal in the tournament for 24 years. I think it is absolutely incredible moment. Slightly lucky deflection. I felt bad for Schmeichel as he was powerless to kind of do anything against the deflection. But a really well hit shot. And I think overall 1-1 was probably a fair result. Šeško, in my scale of how annoyed am I that we haven't signed him, it's pretty high right now. Again, another raw player, but he had 2 shots that were just unbelievable. I was like, I do like this boy. Still a little bit raw, but some real flashes of quality from him. That Slovenia team, I think they're all quite small. There's like Šeško, and then there's a defender at the back who's massive. Yeah, and then the rest of the team are just... Spora looked really good as well. Yeah. But a lot of the team are very, very small. I feel like football's getting a lot more physical, a lot like bigger, and Slovenia just look like... Yeah, they look quite small, but a very good performance. I like the shirts a lot. I think I saw the games, guys. It's kind of hard to keep up and remember what we've missed and what we've seen because it's all so crammed in. But unfortunately, tomorrow there's some utter woke nonsense of only 2 games tomorrow. Just disgusting. But we do have Turkey taking on Georgia. That's going to be a spicy one. Why do I think that's going to be like physical as hell?
I think there'll be goals in it, personally. I think this is going to be it's a difficult time as well. Why didn't they make that the 2 p.m. kickoff? Like, why does it have to be at 5? But hey-ho. And then we've got Portugal versus Czech Republic, as we would know them as. Fascinating to see how Portugal open this campaign, expected to deliver. But Czech Republic, I'm not convinced by the qualification campaign they had in Poland's group. They got away with the fact that we weren't very good. Albania were very good. So they managed to qualify. However, I'm not going to say that they're going to pull out a surprise in this match. But however, you can join me for the watch along and we shall go through and we'll see if Portugal surprise.
Well, guys, that is it. We thank you for joining us. There's so much content, so thank you for choosing us to listen to, because it's a pretty
100%.
filled field at the moment. So thank you for listening to us. We can't really tell you when we're going to come back because my work timetable is a bit mental at the moment. But keep an eye on the social medias. We're going to try to do some post-match reactions once, twice a week we're going to aim for. But yeah, keep an eye on our social media and you'll be able to see when we've got more podcasts out. Of course, you can join Adam and me for a bit if and when I find time for the match for the watch alongs. And yeah, thank you very much, guys. You can follow us on Twitter at Italian Anglopod, on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod, and on TikTok at Anglo-Italian Pod. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button down here, please. Get us to 300 subscribers. That would be quite nice. We can push through to 500 before the end of the tournament. Maybe that's too ambitious. Let's see. Prove me right. Guys, Adam, anything to say before I let these people go?
No, that's it. We'll see you on the other side.
Perfect. Ciao. A dopo.